Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. It's the Bible Forum. It's October 1st, 2017. I want to talk to you about the rise of the beast of Revelation. There's books being written about this stuff now, coming around every time you turn around. And the Bible talks about it. The Bible talks about a beast arising during the end times, specifically during the Great Tribulation. Now, in the Bible, the word beast just refers to something indescribably evil. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an animal. It's a human being who is just off the chart evil, although he does not appear to be. I mean, he doesn't have horns and he's a nice guy. You'd probably like being with him. But he's a beast. Who is he? What's his purpose? What is he trying to accomplish? Well, the news today is filled with men and women who offer all sorts, usually of sensational suggestions and solutions. But what's the real truth? Well, the book of Revelation, the last book in the New Testament, speaks of this beast, speaks of him as the head of the final form of world government. Back in the Old Testament book of Daniel, Daniel was given a vision on the plain, a vision of I don't know what to call it without calling it what it really is, but it was like a man, dressed like a king or whatever it might have been. It represented the various world governments that were still to come from Daniel's time on. When he looked at this image of a person, he saw the head. And God told him that this represented the kingdom in which he was currently living, Nebuchadnezzar, days of Babylon, long time ago. The breast and the arms were made of silver. And so that represented an inferior kingdom. The head was gold. This is silver. Scholars believe that this corresponds to the Medo-Persian Empire. When Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom fell, it got absorbed. The Medes and the Persians. Nebuchadnezzar was a Persian. The Medes came in. Anyway, so it wasn't as strong as the original. The belly of the image and the thighs were of brass, and this is representing something that's weaker still from silver. And scholars believe that this was the Greek Empire. The legs were of iron, representing the Roman Empire. Strong, but not a lot of value. And the feet were a mixture of iron and clay, representing a weakened form of Roman government, what we call today Western civilization, because Western civilization is based on Roman law, Roman government style. While Nebuchadnezzar was watching, a stone came and cut that image down, broke it. The Word of God, or the Son of God, speaking to this issue, talks about this destruction. Jesus is coming to destroy human government from off the earth at the end of the age. In the scheme of things, we are at the bottom level with a weakened form of the Roman government, a part of every European-style government, including the United States and all of South and Central America, Canada, Australia, Western civilization. In this scheme, the United States is clearly the strongest and most influential. Other Western nations, as well as Eastern and African nations, rely on us. We have buoyed up the EU for decades. Our current government is interested in the European Union doing for themselves for a change. And with Russia on the move again to recapture its lost empire, along with an emboldened Islam, there is a pressure that is being applied to the West. Europe is frightened that something would happen that they are ill-equipped to stop. Here comes a European Union boss by the name of Jean-Claude Juncker. With President Trump making it clear to the European Union that they need to step up, this man is pushing for a more powerful European Union. He delivered his State of the Union so-called address, suggesting that now, with Great Britain leaving the EU, things needed to change. He went on to say that the continent's economy is growing, and because of this, its federalists should take the chance and push for a big leap forward. Now, he's a charismatic leader. People like him. He's already pushing for the spread of the euro, that's their monetary system, to non-European nations. And that would certainly spread the economic power of this joint effort. Along with this, Juncker is calling for the combining of the EU's two presidential positions. He wants to take the European Commission, responsible for day-to-day running, and the European Council, which brings together national leaders, to represent a single governing body, clearly with a single leader, clearly with him being the guy. The new leadership position would also be emboldened by what the European Commission President envisions as a new European Defense Union, something all the member states would join, essentially a European army. You see the implications. Now, the EU has never really had this sort of consolidated power before. And because of this, prophecy watchers have been relegated to suggesting results here, should the EU make this move or the other one. You do realize the EU meets in a great big building that looks deliberately like a partially constructed or partially destroyed Tower of Babel. And outside of their government building, they have an image of a beast with a woman riding his back. Now, it's not the Bible story. It's mythology going back, the combining of Europe with Asia. But it's interesting that it would be that imagery. Bible prophecy scholars have often fixated on the number 10 and watched the European Union grow and swell to exceed that number. It's currently about 25 or thereabouts, with auxiliary members that boost it all up, and they have bunches of people. Now, for the first time, the European Union has created a joint military command center. They did that in March of this year, 2017. In fact, Germany's foreign minister has expressed hopes of a European superstate becoming a global player in international politics in the midst of the growing tensions between Russia and North Korea. Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel said it was time Europe found, quote, its own voice, end of quote, instead of letting the United States dictate global affairs while the continent argues amongst itself. The Ukrainian president is lobbying for the eastern border of the European Union to be the Ukraine. He said the idea of European integration must get a second wave. They bring this group in, which is not technically Western government. The bureaucrats in Brussels would like nothing more than that the EU would become a military rival of the United States in size, capacity, and cohesion. So what does the Bible say about all this? Well, Bible students who wisely use the standard hermeneutic, that hermeneutic is described as the literal, grammatical, historical method of interpretation. These students have long held that the EU could represent the final beast empire revealed in the book of Daniel and the book of the Revelation. The potential for a new, more powerful federalist Europe with a single president to lead it has ramifications, not only politically and economically, but biblically, prophetically as well. The Economist magazine, not exactly a biblically prophetic publication, recognized that this was an important factor for some Protestants voting to leave the European Union. They published an article entitled "Protestants Leave Europe as a Matter of Eschatology." Eschatology being the fancy word for end times prophecy studies. These evangelicals, they said, believe that remaining in the EU put them at risk of eventually joining the beast's final world empire. Why? Well, because the Bible very forcefully represents several different beasts. Beast being a word to describe the indescribable. Each one is used symbolically to give insight into different aspects of a final world empire and its leadership. And when studied together, gives us a much better picture of what we can expect in the last days. For example, Revelation 13 speaks of a beast in its first 7 verses. Another beast ridden by a woman is described in Revelation chapter 17. Daniel 7 speaks of 4 separate beasts, with a reference to a little horn that appears during the time of the fourth beast. While Revelation 13 also describes a second two-horned beast, beginning in verse 11. The idea here is that this final world empire will be a 10-nation alliance or a 10-leader alliance appointed or dispatched to regain control ostensibly after the rapture. Nobody knows what causes the problem. I think it's the rapture. I mean, you take millions of Christians out suddenly, and you've got some serious problems that need to be handled immediately. Not just medical and, crashes and destructive kinds of things, but nations and individual groups trying to take advantage, stepping into the chaos to get what they want. If this were to happen, things could get seriously out of control in the world. And it would primarily impact the Middle East and the area we know as Israel and Syria and Saudi Arabia and all like that. It could be a major Arab attack. It could be a Russian incursion, opportunists. It could be Iran or even China. We don't know. I'm suggesting the rapture is a theory. It could be something else. But it's a time of great global chaos with all sorts of people and groups trying to take advantage of that chaos. What we do know is that there will be a Western or Western-powered global government with vested interest in maintaining both political and economic order in the region. You see, the Bible narrative shows us a 10-king alliance, which was designed to control the nations of the world. 3 of these rise up to depose, to ostensibly kill their leader. When the leader is supernaturally raised from the dead, he kills off the 3 rebels, and he establishes himself as supreme, so that in the end, where there were 10 of these guys and the leader, now there's only 7. With the man of sin, as the Bible describes him, the Antichrist, the little horn, as number 8. 8 in the Bible is the number of new beginnings. Now, regardless of how all this turns out, recent events represent a serious change for this region of the world. The Bible has a lot to say about the last days. It might be good to read through Daniel and Revelation again, because we're watching things really, really change. We have a new president. And there are things in the Middle East that are settling down just because of his influence and the fear of what he might do. But there are other things that are ramping up for the very same reason. Russia is now in the Middle East, never was before. Russia plays a big part in end times scenarios. Turkey is becoming a major military economic player Turkey is in the biblical narrative. Egypt is kind of lying low, doing her own thing, not bothering anybody. An ally of the United States, a quasi-ally of Israel. They get along. But when all the chaos begins, the Bible says that Egypt takes advantage. And they come into the land of Israel to take over, sensing weakness. It's going to be crazy. I don't believe the church is going to be here. And so it's interesting to watch it all unfold, but there are people who are shedding blood. There are people dying every day over there. To do what? To stop the chaos. I would like to suggest to you that chaos is not going to end until Jesus comes. Read Daniel. Read the book of the Revelation. You might be interested. It's almost history.